Hello, everybody. Today we're going to finish our conversation about how the nervous system communicates information all around the body. In the last lecture, we learned about the action potential, and the action potential is essentially the tool, the strategy that allows for electrical communication down a neuron. And today's topic, we didn't go beyond the action potential in the previous lecture. So today we need to figure out, okay, what happens next? So an action potential comes along, sodium ions and potassium ions move in and out. Awesome. But then what happens when you get to the end of a neuron? And what we reach at the end of a neuron, what we reach at the axon terminal, we usually reach a space, and we have to actually communicate information across that. Now, I say we usually end up with a space. It is possible, and it does happen that we end up with a gap junction. Oh, so imagine this for a second. Imagine an electrical synapse. And this is all I'm going to say about electrical synapses. We're not going to talk about them very much. We will see them in action when we talk about the heart and how heart muscle communicates electrical information all around it. So electrical synapses are important to understand, but essentially an electrical synapse is there is no space. You connect, look, you throw a gap junction between, go with me on this, all right, between the cell 1 that has electrical information traveling through it. Here comes the electrical information. Here comes the action potential, the ions moving in and out. And then that electrified, action potential-ified cytoplasm can pass directly through the gap junction and into cell number 2. That's a cell number 2. And you can imagine that if a shift in action potential, if the cytoplasm itself travels through a gap junction into a new cell, that's going to change the membrane potential in the new cell. And then that's all we're going to do is stimulate the opening and closing of various voltage-gated sodium and potassium channels, which is going to propagate the action potential onward. That electrical synapse is found in certain places. It's really, really fast, but the rest of our entire lecture is going to be talking about a chemical synapse. This image right here is illustrating the chemical synapse. The synapse is the space. Look at this. The synapse is not the end of a neuron. It's the space in between the neuron and the next person in line, whether it be an effector or another neuron. In this image, you can see that we actually have another neuron is the recipient of the electrical impulse that's passing down. So let's talk about a chemical synapse. Let's look at the anatomy of our chemical synapse, since that's what we're spending the rest of our time on. I'm going to draw you a chemical synapse. So let's imagine that we have our neuron, and we have our axon terminal, and everybody's cool with this. This makes perfect sense, and man, that is an attractive axon terminal. The axon terminal is not touching the next person in line. The next person in line could be another neuron, or it could be an effector. I'm just going to make a rather amorphous, like who knows what this thing is. It's either another neuron or an effector. What do we know is traveling down this neuron because life is so exciting? Let's just call it Dude, an action potential is coming. And remember, an action potential is nothing more than this weird wave-like switching of the membrane potential from negative to positive and back again. And remember that as the action potential traveled down the axon, as the membrane potential changes, voltage-gated sodium channels and potassium channels are stimulated to open because of the change in membrane potential. They're voltage-gated channels. That's important because we've got a new voltage-gated channel that's coming into play here. We haven't seen this guy yet, but it's a gated channel. It's got a lid on it, and I'm going to give you a little hint here. Oh, that's a lightning bolt. And the lightning bolt indicates that this is a voltage-gated, anybody want to take a wild guess? Calcium channel. Interesting. And I'll tell you right now that there is a high concentration of calcium outside the cell in the extracellular fluid, and that tells you that there's probably, well, it doesn't tell you, but we can probably guess that if we've got calcium channels and a high concentration outside, that we have a low concentration of calcium inside, and that's true. So here comes the action potential. You know where this is going. The first thing that happens is that voltage, that's voltage-gated calcium channels open. Why? Dogs, the membrane potential just changed. The action potential arrived and caused the opening of these calcium channels. What's calcium going to do? Calcium rushes in. Okay, who cares? I'm telling you right now, nobody cares. So what? So calcium goes in. That doesn't like make me go, oh, of course, except, this is so cool. Inside the axon terminal, you also have these little bubbles of juice. And I'm going to draw the juice like a this. Guess what the little green things are? That's neurotransmitter, dogs. That's a chemical. And the chemical is inside this little bubble in the axon terminal. And in comes calcium because the action potential arrived. Now, through the magic of chemistry, the calcium, I don't know the mechanism of this. The calcium comes in and somehow stimulates. There's some kind of chemical reaction that takes place, some kind of shape change that happens, and I guarantee someone somewhere knows the exact mechanism of this, and calcium is going to bind. Calcium, I'm going to say it binds to neurotransmitter bubble. Vesicle is probably a more scientifically lovely word. And guess what happens when calcium binds? Exocytosis of neurotransmitter where? Dude, all we're going to do is dump neurotransmitter through the process of exocytosis into the synapse. Remember, the synapse is this space. This right here is my synapse. Now, my electricity can't cross the synapse. My kids have this awesome, like, electrical set that they can build all these crazy circuits, and they totally, like, make these switches and these push this button and that light goes on, but if you push this button, then that light goes off, and this one blinks, and the green light and the red, whatever. They make all these really complicated circuits, and what they, without a doubt, know is that you can't pass electrical information across a space. You have to have a connection between two things if you want to pass electrical information, which is why we have to go to a chemical message. So exocytosis of the neurotransmitter happens into the synapse. Now what? Well, my friends, all sorts of things can happen. I mean, truly, depending on the neurotransmitter and depending on the effector, we could have a myriad of different options. First of all, in most cases, we will have a receptor. I say most cases, it would be really pointless to dump neurotransmitter into a synapse if you didn't have some kind of receptor on whatever is next that can connect with the neurotransmitter. Once we connect, oh my gosh, so you get neurotransmitter plus receptor, and then it's like choose your own adventure, man. What do you want to have happen? Depends on your receptor, depends on the neurotransmitter, but you can actually stimulate the opening of sodium channels. What's that going to do? That's actually going to stimulate an action potential in the next cell. You could stimulate the opening of potassium channels. What's that going to do? Oh my gosh, what a cool application question that would be. If you open potassium channels, that's going to prevent an action potential. That's going to make the membrane potential more negative because potassium is going to rush in, out. Potassium is going to go where it's not supposed to go. Crap. In or out. It's going to go where it's not supposed to go. Sodium comes in. Potassium is going to rush out. So potassium rushes out and prevents an action potential in the effector. You also can have the binding of neurotransmitter to a receptor, and then you have some, like, direct action of the effector, such as the contraction of a skeletal muscle, and that's coming too. We're going to learn the mechanism of that whole process as well. All right, let's take a little bit of a closer look at the neurotransmitter. Once the neurotransmitter is in the synapse and is having an effect, there are some things that we need to think about. Having an effect, neurotransmitter causing an action in an effector or causing another action potential in a postsynaptic neuron, we have an effect. But here's the thing. If you just dump neurotransmitter into the synapse and it stayed there, it would keep on stimulating an effect. And can you, like, does that work for you? That, dude, if you keep on stimulating an effect, you have basically no control. The nervous system doesn't work like that. So as quickly as an action potential can travel down a neuron and dump neurotransmitter into the synapse, it removes the neurotransmitter just as fast. That way, if I want to send the message again, I'm going to send another action potential and dump more neurotransmitter. I'm not going to end up with, like, I'm going to send this really precise, specific message, go, and then end up with this kind of oozy, like, who knows how long it's going to last, how long is the neurotransmitter going to hang out in that synapse, maybe till it just diffuses away, see you later, it might take a while. I'm going to send the message and then clean up immediately after so I can send another message. It allows for more precise control. So how do we get the neurotransmitter out of there? Well, there's a couple of strategies that we can use. Number one, here's our job. Get rid of the neurotransmitter. Strategy number one, reabsorb it into the presynaptic neuron.